Are the Montreal Canadiens about to make the most desperate or most brilliant move of their rebuilding era? Welcome back to the channel. What you're about to hear might just reshape the entire trajectory of the Habs season. And frankly, it's about damn time someone in that organization showed some urgency. Let's dive deep into this breaking story that has the hockey world buzzing. Let's set the stage here, folks. The Nashville Predators aren't just struggling. They're in complete freefall. 6 wins. 6 against 12 losses and 4 overtime defeats. Dead last in the entire National Hockey League. This is the same organization that went all in during the offseason, throwing massive contracts at Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, believing they were one summer away from contention. How spectacularly wrong they were. Monday night's 8-3 shellacking at the hands of the Florida Panthers wasn't just a loss. It was a public execution. And Barry Trotz, the man who built this roster, he's had enough. When a general manager as respected and battle-tested as Trotz starts openly discussing trade possibilities and calling agents to gauge interest in moving veteran players, you know the situation has reached DEFCON 1. This isn't a minor course correction. This is a full-scale teardown disguised as a transition to youth. And sitting right in the middle of this carnage is a former Conn Smythe Trophy winner who suddenly finds himself available. Let's talk about Ryan O'Reilly for a moment, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating. This is a 34-year-old center with 1,174 NHL games under his belt, 309 career goals, 837 points, a Stanley Cup ring from 2019 with St. Louis, where he absolutely dominated the playoffs and walked away with the Conn Smythe Trophy as the postseason's most valuable player. This isn't some washed-up veteran clinging to relevance. O'Reilly has 6 goals and 13 points in just 22 games this season despite playing for the league's worst team. Think about that for a second. He's producing at nearly a point per 2 games pace on a roster that can't buy a win. Imagine what he could do with actual NHL caliber talent surrounding him. And here's the kicker that should have every contending team's phone lines lighting up. He's making just $4.5 million per season with a year and a half remaining on his contract. In today's inflated salary cap environment, that's not just reasonable. It's an absolute bargain for a proven, two-way center who can win face-offs, kill penalties, and produce offensively. Pierre LeBrun dropped the hammer on Tuesday's insider trading, confirming what many suspected. Teams are circling like sharks, and the price tag is steep. We're talking a first-round pick plus an A-level prospect just to start the conversation. That's not a rental price. That's a "we believe this player can change our trajectory" price. Now, let's pivot to why the Canadiens are even in this conversation, because their situation is equally dire, just in a different way. Montreal has been searching for a legitimate second-line center for what feels like an eternity. Nick Suzuki is locked in as the number 1 guy, and he's been excellent. But behind him, it's been a revolving door of mismatched pieces and unfulfilled potential. And then the injury bug struck with the force of a freight train. Alex Newhook, out long-term. Kirby Dach, the player they traded for and invested heavily in as a potential cornerstone, out long-term. Patrick Laine, their big-ticket acquisition, who was supposed to provide scoring punch, out long-term. The Canadiens' depth chart down the middle looks like a battlefield hospital right now. They got so desperate, they signed Alexandre Texier, a player the St. Louis Blues literally bought out, to a 1-year deal just to have a warm body who can take face-offs. That's not a plan. That's a cry for help. Enter Ryan O'Reilly, stage left. Here's where we need to put on our analytical hats and really dissect whether this potential move is genius or madness. O'Reilly brings everything Montreal desperately needs right now. He's a legitimate top 6 center who can slot in behind Suzuki and immediately upgrade the second line. His defensive responsibility is elite. This is a guy who can shut down opponents' top lines while still contributing offensively. His face-off percentage is consistently among the league's best, which is crucial for a young team still learning how to control games. Beyond the on-ice contributions, there's the intangible factor. O'Reilly is a Stanley Cup champion and playoff MVP. He knows what it takes to win when the stakes are highest. For a Canadiens roster loaded with young, developing talent, having that veteran presence and championship pedigree in a room could be invaluable. The contract is team-friendly enough that Montreal could absorb it without major cap gymnastics. And with a year and a half of term remaining, this isn't just a rental. It's a player who could be part of the solution for the next 2 playoff pushes. But let's pump the brakes for a second and inject some reality into this conversation. The Montreal Canadiens are not a Stanley Cup contender this season. They're not even a guaranteed playoff team. They're a young, rebuilding franchise that's still trying to establish its identity and develop its core. Trading a first-round pick and an A-level prospect for a 34-year-old center, no matter how good he is, flies directly in the face of that patient rebuild philosophy. Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton have been methodical in their approach since taking over. They've accumulated draft picks, developed prospects, and avoided the short-term thinking that plagued previous regimes. Giving up premium assets for a player who'll be 36 when his contract expires feels like a panic move, not a calculated step forward. And let's address the elephant in the room: O'Reilly's age and declining speed. He's not the same player who dominated the 2019 playoffs. Father Time is undefeated, and while O'Reilly remains effective, his best days are behind him. Is that really where Montreal should be allocating precious resources? O'Reilly isn't the only veteran name being shopped from Nashville's disaster of a season. LeBron specifically mentioned Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, both players with full no-trade clauses who could theoretically be moved if they're willing to waive. Stamkos, the legendary goal scorer who left Tampa Bay after 16 seasons, has struggled to find chemistry in Nashville's dysfunctional system. Marchessault, fresh off a Stanley Cup victory with Vegas, probably didn't envision being on a last-place team when he signed his deal. The Predators are open to discussing these players with interested teams, according to LeBron. But here's the reality. Those no-trade clauses give Stamkos and Marchessault complete control. They're not going anywhere unless they want to, and convincing them to waive for a rebuilding team like Montreal seems highly unlikely. O'Reilly, with no trade protection, is the most realistic target. He's also the most affordable and the best fit for what Montreal needs. Here's where we stand as of right now. Barry Trotz has begun the process of gauging interest from his veterans' camps. He's being transparent about the situation. If Nashville can turn things around, great. If not, he's willing to facilitate moves for players who want another crack at contention. The asking price for O'Reilly is clear: a first-round pick and an A-level prospect. That's non-negotiable territory for a player of his caliber and contract situation. Montreal is confirmed as one of the interested parties, but they're certainly not alone. Every contending team looking for center depth will be making calls. Teams like Colorado, Carolina, Dallas, and yes, even Toronto could all use a player like O'Reilly. The question becomes, is Kent Hughes willing to deviate from his long-term plan for a short-term solution? Does he believe this current Canadiens roster, even with injuries, is close enough to contention that adding O'Reilly pushes him over the edge? My gut says no. Hughes has been too disciplined, too patient to suddenly shift gears now. But the pressure is mounting. The injuries are piling up. The fan base is restless. Sometimes, even the most patient rebuilds require a calculated risk. Let's zoom out for a moment and look at what this all means for the broader NHL landscape. Nashville's collapse represents one of the most spectacular failed gambles in recent memory. They went all in, believing their window was still open, and instead found themselves with the worst record in hockey and a roster full of aging, expensive veterans they now need to move. Montreal's interest in O'Reilly represents the eternal tension every rebuilding team faces. When do you stop accumulating assets and start competing? When do you transition from patient development to aggressive pursuit of wins? There's no perfect answer. Move too early, and you mortgage your future for a first-round exit. Wait too long, and your young core's development stagnates without veteran leadership and playoff experience. O'Reilly could be the bridge between those two phases. A player who doesn't destroy your future, but accelerates your present. Or he could be an expensive mistake that sets the rebuild back another year. This story is far from over. We're still months away from the trade deadline, and a lot can change between now and then. Nashville could miraculously turn things around, though I wouldn't bet on it. Montreal's injured players could return and make the need less urgent. Another team could blow the Predators away with an offer they can't refuse. But one thing is certain, Ryan O'Reilly will be traded. The only questions are when, where, and for what price. If you're a Canadiens fan, this is the kind of rumor that should have you both excited and terrified. Excited because O'Reilly is exactly the type of player who could stabilize your lineup and provide championship experience. Terrified because the cost might be too steep for a team that's still a year or two away from genuine contention. What do you think? Should Kent Hughes pull the trigger on O'Reilly? Is a first-round pick and an A-level prospect too much to pay? Or is this the exact type of move Montreal needs to accelerate their rebuild? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. I want to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most intriguing trade scenarios of the season, smash that like button and let me know what other stories you want to break down. The NHL trade market is heating up and we're going to be all over it. Until next time, this is your home for no-nonsense hockey analysis. Stay hungry, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.